It's funny because the camera's not working. Oh, yes, it is. Okay. Okay, it's 5:30 on October 15th. I'm going to call the special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. At the table, we have Selectman Jim Lampo, Selectwoman Jude Reed, and First Selectwoman Martha Shoemaker. The agenda item, we had one agenda item on it. It's the possible discussion and possible signing of the IMA for with New London for the sewer project. I noticed that I did not put on public comment. So I would like to have a motion on the floor to amend the agenda to include public comment if anyone would like to speak.
So moved.
I'll second.
With a caveat that we have a time limit on this meeting, considering zoning meeting will start before 6:30, at 6:30.
So 3-minute time for
I
public
think
comment.
that's fair.
All right, Jim, will you agree to that friendly amendment?
Yeah.
Agenda. Thank you. All right, there'll be no discussion on that. Then we'll call this meeting. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of amending the agenda to include public comment with a limit of 3 minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, so is there anyone in the audience who would like to offer public comment before we go into this meeting? Dennis go first. Okay,
Okay.
you got to come up here, Dennis, so we can record you.
Dennis Maluzzo, 7 Portland Avenue. As you might know, that the IMA has been in contention. As far as I'm concerned, there's still areas in the IMA that we need further clarification. And why in the IMA some view miscellaneous B is 31% of the project. Now, 31, it adds up to 31% going to the New London facility. We can't figure out where it is. We went from 29.4 to 29.7, and now we're 31, and we should actually be 22%. That's one thing. The project start date, the flow rate date is 2028. And if this project, if the IMA is approved the way it stands right now, the earliest they could go to bid would be the end of 2024 or the spring of 2025. Now, we are still under the thought process that no construction is going to happen between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So now the project gets started and then gets stopped and then gets started again in September. Now, providing winter project, we need good weather to continue. What happens when they get to the
Just so you know, 1 minute.
the old Lime Shores rock pile? How long does that take? Blasting is not cheap, and it's not anything that you can go quick. And then also, where's the commitment from the state of Connecticut as far as the 4 Mile River Bridge? This commitment from Amtrak on Amtrak's crossing. As we know, Amtrak is in a project of its own. I think we're going to be put in the backseat. So that's what I've got concerns about.
Thank you. That's, Mary, are you coming up?
Really didn't come prepared like usual to speak since it wasn't on the agenda, and I realize that.
Sorry.
But I appreciate the opportunity just the same. I'll be very brief. I do echo the same concern. How did we get to be 31% of this contract? If you go back to the Bible, the Woodward and Kerr Coastal Agreement, which we paid $265,000 for, in that document, we are 28.5, including the commercial properties. So how are we today 31%, 29.7, 29.4? It seems like no one really can tell us what percentage of this project we're really responsible for. But again, I would go back to the study that we paid for, that the town paid for, and say that we are 28.5, and these numbers therefore need to be adjusted. I also know that all three of you received a letter from Frank Pappalardo representing the Soundview Sewer Coalition. And I would like his letter to be read into the record tonight. He brought up some very valuable points. They are still outstanding. I don't believe any of those points have been resolved. When we talk about affordability, please let's remember there is no date yet or any plan to bid the individual projects in each of the communities. We have no idea. I don't believe it's ever been gone out to bid what that expense will be, and then the ongoing expenses. So, I mean, I have my MDC bill, and about 30% of my sewer bill in Rocky Hill is clean water funds going back to DEEP. So we have to calculate all of the funds, all of the factors going into this project, not just the force main, the pump house, and the bioxide station, and then of course the cost for the bioxide, which I understand is outrageous. So, and if you go back, there was also a letter presented by White Sands back in 2014, which was reviewed by our town attorney at that point, clarifying again that you cannot assess twice. You cannot force homeowners to make the numbers work, say that the special assessment is this, and then roll the other factors into the maintenance. It is against the law. You cannot do it. So please keep that in mind, that before this project is deemed affordable, before there's a shovel in the ground, I think that the entire project has to go out to bid, that all of the expenses have to be identified, and not just the force main, not just the infrastructure. What will that get you? Nothing. It won't get you connected. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? Okay, is there anyone online that would like to speak? I see a couple of people, 463 number. Anyone want to speak there? Katie, if you're listening, can you make sure that people can unmute if they'd like to speak?
Yep, the only one that is currently unmuted is that phone number.
Okay,
Steve is looking to speak.
okay. Steve,
I would-
sorry.
I'd like to public comment.
Sure. I'm sure, oh, wait a minute, hold on.
Steve Tsunami, 24-2 Short Hills Road. I'm speaking to address some of the concerns that some of the people have. Dennis and Mary are correct. I believe our percentage in the IMA is 31%. It was, I don't know how we ended up with 31%, but I don't want to convolute the CSA at 29.7, which is our percent of EDUs, with what New London is charging us. They may have used a slightly different formula to figure out how many one is based on gallons per day, one is based on EDUs. The difference was in the original agreement that was signed by the previous administrations.
Hmm.
The percentage is increased the same for both, for the O-Line Beach Associations and O-Line WPCA. So the percentage increase from the previous agreement to this is exactly the same. I wasn't even aware that we were paying 31%, but it's based on gallons. And I think it just goes to show that whether you use EDUs or gallons per day or whatever formula that a lot of engineering firms use, O-Lime's going to use around 30%. So those numbers have increased 5%, I believe, since the cost from the proposed agreement last August that expired that no one acted on, and now is 5%. I believe it's a total of 9.2% for each entity since the one was signed in this agreement. And also the interest rate increased from, I believe, 2% to 2.62625%. Those numbers are far less than 3.5% and 25% increase in connection fees that New London was originally asking. Those numbers were sent back to New London as a first volley for negotiation, and they accepted them. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm happily surprised that they were accepted because they fell well short of what they were requesting. The projects, at least O-Line, is on track to be bid this year, the internal infrastructure. When the IMA is completed, the shared infrastructure is on track to be bid this year. O-Line, Old Colony is on track to be bid this year. O-Line Shores, I think, is motioning to go out to bid for this year. And I believe Miami Beach is going to follow. So it's not a matter of months.
Sorry. Go ahead.
It's not a matter of months or years before these projects will be bid. O-Line has indicated and will implement no summer construction, Memorial Day to Labor Day. We can't control the beach associations. I believe the beach associations have already authorized work through the summer. So that's up to them. They're private roads. We can't control them. But here is right. Work on 156 is dictated by the state of Connecticut. I believe they will allow work during the summer. We won't allow them in Portland, but I can't, it's a joint infrastructure plan. I think they'll work on 156.
They won't be allowed to work in Portland or Portland Avenue?
I'm sorry, Portland Avenue.
Okay.
In Hartford Avenue, any part associated with Soundview and stuff.
Just wanted to clarify that.
The bridges on 156 have been discussed. I've attended meetings as early as or as late as last week. Fuss and O'Neill owed them some information. It's being incorporated into the bridge plans. That item should be settled. And then I can't remember any other things that were brought up. But thank you.
The bridge project is slated to go in the summer of 2025.
Correct.
And it is on the state DOT, and that is what they're saying. So,
Right.
yeah, that's what I have. So
I don't understand the connection there. I'm trying to figure out. I mean, our system goes through there, but the state has requested that we remove from the limits our pipe, and the bridge contractor is going to be putting in our pipe, which they say is going to be cheaper because they already had to redo the road and redo other utilities. So it's just a matter of putting up. We'll find out.
okay. I think there may be some questions for you, so you might want to stay at the table because I know that we're coming up on the actual IMA.
I agree with Mary that maybe Frank's letter should be read in as public comment, or are we just going to add it?
Well, I wish Frank had said, can you read this in for public comment? But I'm happy to do it if I can adjust it, but I'll include a copy. But he said, hi, Martha, Jim, and Jude. Here are some thoughts for your consideration today regarding the New London IMA. I understand the consequences and difficult position we are in regarding the possible loss of the $19 million loan if the NLIMA is not signed. It would be to no one's best interest should the loan be pulled. I believe we may be able to make necessary adjustments moving forward with a proper establishment of a fair and equitable cost sharing agreement below. Below are some specific and general considerations. I understand that by signing the New London IMA, the selectmen are not agreeing to any cost sharing agreement as proposed. Can you confirm this? I believe we may be able to make adjustments through the CSA to correct many of the deficiencies and issues established with both the NL and East Lyme IMAs. I understand that by signing the New London IMA, the selectmen are not agreeing to project commencement and that the selectmen will have the final approval when the time comes. Can you confirm this? When the New London IMA is signed, the Alliance says they are going out to bid. This, however, is a bid for the common infrastructure only. Is there a bid date set for individual beach and sound view gravity lines? Without knowing the entire project costs, both individual beach and common, how can it be determined if the project is affordable? By knowing the cost. I mean, an actual bid, not guesswork. The Old Lyme WPCA has not established what constitutes or defines an EDU. Their cost estimates per DEU are guesswork. After over 10 years, they are no closer to an answer. Unbelievable. Now they want to push the New London IMA through so they can go out to bid. In addition, the Old Lyme WPCA has not defined what is included nor how the user fees will be established. They've given estimates of $450 a year. However, there's been no backup to support these estimates. When pressed for details, their answers are vague and invasive. So many unanswered questions. The Old Lyme WPCA has not been forthcoming with how the capital or connection fee costs for the New London and East Lyme IMAs will be recovered. None of the guesswork. EDU costs provided by the Old Lyme WPCA have these costs included. As passed through capital costs from New London and East Lyme, there must be included in the project capital cost. It appears that the Old Lyme WPCA is considering these capital or connection fees to be included as annual user fees to artificially show a reduced overall project cost. The Old Lyme WPCA has proven and demonstrated through the New London and East Lyme IMAs, the draft CSA, and by delivering misleading and vague information, their lack of experience, unwillingness to work with stakeholders, and exhibited a history of not working in the best interest of the town of Old Lyme and Soundview. The CSA project cost, sewer ordinance, and management must be developed through and by our elected government and the project stakeholders. Thank you for your time. Signed, Frank Papalardo, 30 Swan Avenue. Can I keep my copy? I have my copy.
You have it. I just printed it.
And that was read into record from Mr.
You need
Papel.
this, I can print one.
No, I can put it on and put it on. So if that's it for public comment, is there anyone else on the line that would like public comment to give public comment? I know that Mr. Noe's on, I know that Mr. Whalen's on, and there's another number, there's an unverified number and 860-463-0591. If you have anything to say, this is the time to say it. Going once, going twice. Going 3 times. Okay, so I guess we're done with public comment.
Yeah, but you start.
So we have a discussion of the IMA that is in before us. And we have a copy of it that was sent to the select people a few weeks ago. We did receive questions, and I want to make everyone explicitly aware that we're late in the game to getting all this and working through with Mr. Brian Estep in New London on our concerns for the IMA. I was told that I would receive a copy when it was ready. I did not receive it when it came to the private beach associations. It was not sent to me. Or I would have shared it at that time with the players involved in the town. And it wasn't given until later in the summer to us after agreements and had been made with Mr. Estep and New London and had been negotiation around us. And I'm still going to feel that way. This is a very difficult situation. Because this is a forever thing. This is not something that goes away. And when you are considering something like this, you have to consider so many facets, because this puts a mark into a line that's forever history once this project begins. There's no going backwards. And when you're talking about this amount of money, it's not something that we take easily. We look at it from all aspects. So Jim, Jude, and I came into this, although we've all heard about it for years. We came into this in November of last year and trying to come up to speed. The biggest thing for me is the residents of this town need to be able to get the funding, the clean water funding, if this project goes through, is bidded out, is reasonable, and goes through, then they need to be able to access that funding. And as Frank said in the letter, kind of under the gun, because people keep threatening to take it away from us, including the state of Connecticut. So
I have a question, Martha.
Yeah.
We had a discussion at our last meeting and you indicated that you were having a meeting with the Attorney General and a representative from DEEP.
I didn't meet with the Attorney General. I met with
Can
DEEP.
you tell us about that meeting?
I basically explained my concerns, and they're not really worried about, they're not worried about the contents of the IMA. They're not really worried about the contents of the CSA. They just want this project to go through and they want us to sign it. But I did bring up some concerns about the height of the building. And they didn't know that there was some work to be done left on the stairs at that time. So I brought some of my concerns to them. Graham Stevens and Carlos and Nisha, and there were some other people on the line as well. And they said that they would get back to me this week, but they again urged that we consider signing the IMA so that the funding, because we wanted to ensure that funding would be there for the people in the town of Old Lyme. And that was their basic. And then some of the questions I had that they would get back to me, they said they couldn't get back to me. They said, try to regroup with me this week. And of course, with the holiday yesterday, I didn't hear from anyone.
My concern is that we not lose this funding, of course, if this project has to move forward. I mean, it's certainly unaffordable without the funding. And with that said, I agree with the beginning of what Frank said, which is approving the IMA with the understanding that certain adjustments or clarifications are made within this confines of the CSA. But to lose that sort of funding at this time after all these years would be, I don't think would be conscionable.
Jim?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a tough spot. And just to be clear with the IMA, in terms of when I first saw it in its present form was August 23rd.
Mhm.
Came from the PBAs, referred to our attorney. That was returned on the 30th of September. I had 4 specific questions for him. I didn't receive an answer till last Wednesday. So not casting aspersions on anyone in that process, but aspersions have been cast that we're foot dragging. I think we're proceeding as quickly as we can. We have a special meeting focused on this tonight. I also understand from talking with counsel that London is in no mood to renegotiate. So, I'm a realist. Everyone knows how I feel about the project. Everyone knows the questions I have. I'm not going to reiterate those tonight. We have to move forward. So, if the IMA is set in stone, Steve, you've already addressed the question of how do we drift to 31%, and that was baked into the first version of the IMA. So it wasn't questioned then, and unfortunately, we can't go back in time. So that is kind of what it is. The concern was that we're kind of drifting up and drifting up and drifting up. But if that's not the particular case, if the reason was because it was calculated gallons versus share, then, you know, I'll accept that. Another question that came up was, why is the town solely responsible for New London's legal fees? That was to the tune of $2,500, not in the grand scheme of things, not a lot of money, but still a question.
So that, that sentence was left over from the original IMA. When that was negotiated, it was renegotiated solely for Old Lyme to join the IMA and be part of the effluent going into New London. Because of that, they put in there that we have to pay. In our discussion with the beach associations, it was agreed to that we would pay 29.7% of 2,500, and each of the other beach associations will pay their percentage share based on total EDUs divided by their EDUs. I don't know all of their things.
So that will be shared in the end.
It'll be shared. So we'll pay basically 30% of 2,500, about $830.
Okay. And the other concerns that I had that I raised with Mike Carey, some of them were alleviated by his answers, and some of them were just, okay, it is what it is. So I think we have to take this opportunity right now that if we're going to move forward with this, we have to address the CSA, we have to address the sewer ordinance, we have to address all these issues we're seeing before us, understanding that we're not going to resolve them today, understanding we're not going to resolve them ahead of the IMA. But I'd like to put them all on the table and get your thoughts on them for how we move forward, because we have to make sure the process is fair, we're all on equal footing, and also that it's perceived to be as such, that people perceive that they're being treated fairly, that they're being part of the process, and we're all proceeding together.
Before you begin, could I just make a comment about Frank Papalardo's letter?
Sure.
I find it frustrating, on the one hand, to say we're only using estimates. You have to have fixed numbers, but getting this project to go to bid has been a struggle in that people don't want it bid. And so the only way to find out if it is affordable or if it isn't is exactly what Mary and Frank and Dennis have said. All the projects have to be bid and they have to be evaluated. Now, I believe we're at the best time to bid these projects if you want them done. In the last 10 years is now. Work is becoming scarcer and scarcer, and people are concerned about work next year. So bidding this fall for anticipation of work starting early next year gives people incentive to sharpen their pencils to try to secure their future, shall we say. So in that regard, if you want the projects done, it's a good time. If you were hoping that they come in over budget, probably not the best time to bid. But
so what I'm hearing is that we are going to bid the entire project before we determine whether it's affordable or not.
we are going to bid, Old Lyme is going to bid internal infrastructure. We are incorporating comments from DEP on our 90% drawings, which would mean that they don't have to look at them at 90%. They usually look at them 100, but they want to look at them early so that the 100 turnaround will be a couple of weeks. We will be able to bid this year if everything goes okay. Old Colony is ready to bid now their internal infrastructure. I believe Miami Beach is close to the stage of bidding. That's one of the reasons I called the meeting to see how close everyone is. And Old Lyme Shores is going to bid this year. So theoretically, in the next 2 months, there could be 5 projects out to bid from Old Lyme.
So we're not going to be asked to pull the trigger without both the internal and the shared.
I would.
Coming in.
That is the desire of the DEP, is that all the bids are received.
Okay.
And we're ready to go in for our individual infrastructure within the streets of Soundview?
Well, we're within a month, 6 weeks from having final plans. Yes.
So there are a few things I like, in terms of costs, I don't want to go through them tonight, but I just want to lay out between WPCA and the Board of Selectmen, or between you and I, just so I can get a better understanding. I have a lot of numbers from you from the meeting on the 28th, so I have a good sense of our capital costs, what they could probably will be based on previous bids, what we expect. I know that when the bids come in, then we'll know. But those include infrastructure to build out in Soundview and Area B, our share of the Force Main Pump Station Bioxide Station, the New London connection fee, the East Lyme connection fee, the Old Lyme connection fee, if any. There's a question on that, and the estimate for site work, trench piping, demolition of septic, backfilling, landscaping on private property. So get a sense. And I know you gave us a number of 5,000 as an estimate for that. So, we have that on the capital side, and on the annual fees, there's a New London wastewater treatment fee for our use, basically. New London Capital shares 0.5% of their budget. East Lyme conveyance, I don't have good numbers on that. East Lyme Capital share, I do not have good numbers on that. Old Lyme administration, Old Lyme contracted operations and maintenance, and other state fees and taxes. You and I'd like to sit down in the next month or so, coming weeks, to get a sense of what we think those are. A couple of other issues I want to raise here to get your thoughts on. One of them is this one's going to be addressed in the WPCA, from what I gather from your minutes. Soundview in Area B, the EDU calculations are being questioned and reconsidered. And I understand over the next few weeks, you'll be going through different iterations of that.
So that's another thing. The online WPCA does have an existing formula that assigns EDUs.
Frank Chan form.
The Frank Chan formula. It's been there for almost 2 years, I believe. It was a basis that I don't know if we ever officially voted this will be our EDUs, but it was a basis to start. And I think that other things came up and it wasn't codified in a vote. Since then, so there is right now an existing formula to figure EDUs. Since then, people have expressed that they don't think the formula is either fair or works well with them. So we've decided to look at different ideas on how to determine EDUs for Soundview and Area B. I opened it up for 3 months. So last month, Dimitri gave a presentation, albeit not finished, but a concept to base EDUs off of. Hopefully this month we'll get a few more. In the next month, which would be December, we would get a couple more. After that, we'll look at them, we'll debate them, and we will have an EDU system in place by, let's say, January or February. Several constraints that I've requested is that that we have 80 to 85% of all people near the 1 EDU mark at 1 EDU. But I have a feeling that may change, maybe 0.95 EDU, 0.105 EDU, or 1. But most people will be paying close to 1 EDU, and the outliers will be either paying less or more. The other one is that the EDUs have to come close to 270. We can't have 1 EDU with 1 EDU, and obviously that doesn't work. So those are the only constraints. I don't care who they discuss the formulas with. I don't care how they're derived. If they're fair and equitable and we vote for it, that's the one that's going to be. So
we'll have a sense when these bids come in. We'll have hopefully a good sense of what our EDU formula is going to be, and we can plug it all in and see what the real numbers are going to be.
We would certainly know the maximum. The maximum is 270 EDUs. So I guess we would know the least. If you want to take a percentage of EDUs and say 250, I think we'll have more EDUs than 250, but if we had 250, you'd be able to come pretty close to that.
I have, can I jump in for
Sure.
a second while I think of this?
You're the boss.
How are we, and I know that Dimitri had some questions on this on his, but for someone who just has land, vacant land, and I think we've talked about possibly square footage or frontage, but I hope that they're going to be assessed at what possibly could be on that empty land.
I believe that, well, the formula I'm working on, if the lot is buildable, it will be assessed 1 EDU.
Mhm.
I mean, it just, and if it's a commercial property that could have multiple units, then it would apply to the multiple unit formula. I mean, there are a number of ways of handling that, but no, they're not gonna get a free ride.
No.
They would be charged at least 1 EDU.
Right, because you could
Because
build,
you could build a
Right.
house. I mean, that they would have to pay it at one point or another. So,
And I would like that we verify that thinking with the zoning department so that we are all on the same
so
page.
that was the other thing. People said, oh, the lots have changed. We can only go off of what the town has. We can't go down the street and say, I know there are 3 bedrooms in there.
No, you cannot.
So
But luckily it's a reval year. so
luckily it
everything
is.
can check.
should be
So
pretty
it
accurate.
should be
So it's
accurate.
Pretty accurate.
All right, so that's a good thing. I wanted to say, when we talk about EDUs and so some of the discussions I've had with the beaches, one beach association says, we're including normally in town, when you have a sewer in a vacant lot, you would be charged a connection fee to connect into the system. We could do that here. We could assess and do a connection fee. And I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea, but if we just called it an assessment, that connection fee, let's say it's $20,000 to connect and the assessment. And we charge $5,000 for the connection fee. That means your assessment is $15,000. That gets financed at 2% for 20 years. If we included the cost of the connection fee in the original assessment, then we would be financing $20,000 over 2%, and no one takes $5,000 out of their pocket. So what's a better way of assessing initial users? Maybe that isn't a better way, because the cost is spread out over 20 years instead of an upfront cost of $5,000 for a connection fee. But, that being said, we have to have something that says, if you connect in the future and haven't paid a connection fee, so maybe those vacant lots get assessed, but they don't get charged a connection fee. This is what a connection fee will cost, so that it's understood that they don't ride on any portion of this. It's just delayed until someone builds that.
Right. They will have to.
So
pay.
they will have, everyone is
Then we
going to
get
have to
the free
pay.
ride.
Right. It's just what's best for everyone as far as, would someone rather take the $5,000 out of their pocket and just pay and finance less? Or would they just rather finance the whole thing? I would imagine if I took a poll, most people would rather finance the $5,000.
Well, at 2%, yeah.
Like 2%.
Okay.
But that is also part of that I think that we have to remember that although you are the old line WPCA, in this particular case, you are the Sound View WPCA. And I need to make sure that the voices of those people in Sound View are being listened to and considered, because they're the ones paying the tab. It isn't, well,
The
except
town.
for Jim, the 2 of us aren't paying.
Right.
But Jim is. And we have to listen to them. And so we have a couple of members on your WPCA that live there. And I know Dimitri is concerned as well. There may be somebody who owns land there that I'm not aware of, but we need to have a lot of open communication. And so if you're discussing something, I need those people to know, whether you send it to Frank and say, send this out through his Soundview email blast, but we need to have these people here. We need to know what they're talking about, and their voices need to be heard as we move forward with more funding and financing.
I'd like to get it, since we have time constraint, we've got some
Yeah,
some
sorry.
big questions, so I'd like to incorporate some of those thoughts into that. Very quickly to dispense with a couple of things that have come up, the pump station design. I've always said that, good design is no more expensive than bad design. And right now it's kind of an eyesore. We're at 90%. Can we revisit a couple things on the finishes of that pump station, like the lighting,
So, this is some of the things that I brought to, the last time I heard this, I think was maybe a month ago, maybe even less. But these are the types of things that are discussed at OLSSPA. Everyone there has agreed, as long as it doesn't affect our zoning,
Right.
To look at finishes and looks and see if we can make it more pleasant for the people that live down in Soundview.
just to make it look more like the existing houses around it.
Yeah, it's pretty.
So another quick area of concern, I just want to make sure we don't lose this. In the Woodward and Kern, they identified two areas, one of historic interest and one of prehistoric interest. Historic interest, a box up on Shore Road in Portland, and prehistoric interest, another box on Hartford down by the parking lot. That was not reflected in the Fuss and O'Neill design. I know they don't have domain over Hartford, but they do over Shore. So I'd like to see that incorporated in Fuss and O'Neill, and I'd like to see the report from Woodward and Kern to see, exactly what we're talking about here and what we're looking at.
All right, I can request that. I'm sure Fuss and O'Neill will do it. And if necessary, I mean, I've been on projects where we've hired archaeologists during the sensitive dig areas to be on site.
You'd be willing to do that if it was necessary.
Yeah, I mean,
All right.
usually that's included. The state usually determines that.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get to some structural issues now. One issue that has been a concern of mine since the very beginning, and a lot of other people have expressed it, is we're going to pay, people at the shoreline are going to pay 100% of the cost of this project in the end. If another part of town decides that they need sewers, the town decides they need sewers, or Hartford decides they need sewers, it is my opinion that that project should be self-funding. And so in our sewer ordinance, which is still in draft form, we haven't signed it, before we do a final version of that, I'd like to see it codified in the sewer ordinance, what part of town is not sewered, what part of town is sewered. And whatever authority we have that'll be administering this project should be coterminous with the sewered part of Old Lyme. And it should be made clear in the ordinance that if there's going to be an expansion into another part of town, or another part of town will have a new sewer project, that will be self-funding. It will not be on the backs of people at the shore.
Right. So, I mean, in all honesty, I don't think I would have thought of that as being a problem, because I would just normally assume that people that are being sewered are going to pay for it. And that those that already have paid for their sewer won't pay for it. But, I don't know who's going to be on the WPCA in a month, never mind a year, or 10. I don't know who's going to be here. So
That's right.
I agree that codifying it somehow so that if there is new sewers in this town, it will be self-funded. That
would go a long way into alleviating our concerns of fairness, because I've asked the question flat out through a couple of administrations. What happens if Halls Road needs sewers? And I was told, well, it's a case by case basis. The town may need to pay for that. So if we can codify that in the ordinance, that if there are other areas of town that are going to be sewered, it's self-funding, that would certainly address an issue of fairness that we have on our side.
totally support that.
Okay, great.
You have a crystal ball there, Steve. You can.
No, I can't see into the future at all, but I just wouldn't have even thought that after all of this, someone would think that the town would pick up a tab for, I just don't think that's the way to run it.
And haven't received satisfactory answers. So another structural issue I'd like to get to is in the CSA, after the third year of the project, all use and operation fees are going to be based on flow.
Thank you.
instead of the share.
Correct.
I'd like to make sure that when we're using Connecticut water data or meters on the wells, that we're charging each individual property owner for what they actually use. And if there's any sort of distortion based on their community, I think that all needs to go away. It should basically be, we're all in this project. Whatever water we use, that's what our bill is.
So hopefully, I mean, I believe everyone's going that way. You know, they're separate WPCAs. They still can determine how, but I would believe that they have to meter because they have to get the combined usage from all their users to bounce off against the other 3 users, to determine usage. But if you take it one step further and have one WPCA, then the percentages of who owns what, as far as, what percentage usage is, goes away, because I would imagine they would just use the personal percentage. So it would be,
Right.
we need to charge $5 a gallon to cover all our costs, or whatever. I don't know what it is yet, but whatever the cost is, I know it's $2.50 per 1,000 gallons to treat. That's in the IMA. So, and then there's conveyance fees. There's a lot that goes into that. When I give a statement like $400 to $600 for a user fee, it's based on what other area towns pay. It's not just pulled out. Their expenses, they have expenses, don't get me wrong, but they're not going to be much different from ours. So I don't know exactly where ours will be, but it's probably going to end up in that range. But anyway, if there was one WPCA, and I fully support this body, the Old Lyme WPCA being that body with representation from the beach associations and possibly even Point of Woods. So we only have one WPCA in this town. If one body is doing the billing, then the percentages of who's using where go away, and it's just based on meters from the individual users. And so,
As long as we're paying for what we use and not for where we live, that would, I think, go a long way to addressing issues of fairness. Go ahead,
No, you
please.
finish. I'll
Um,
wrap up.
Do you have time to finish?
Finally, a big issue that we're having is the notion of the committee that's written into the CSA. And that each private beach association gets to appoint their own representative. No one else has any input into their decision, and they shouldn't. They appoint their representative. When it comes to the town, we have the WPCA as our representative. We have people from the private beaches that have a say in our WPCA because they're town voters. We also have people from outside of the sewer area that have no financial obligation to this project who will also have a say. Thus, it's the perception, and I think the reality, of people living in Soundview that they don't have the representational power or the voting power that the private beaches have. So the concern here is twofold. One, during the construction phase, I understand, who holds the note in this, and it's difficult to undo some of these arrangements in the short term. So I would like to see that we have fair representation for Soundview during this construction phase. And I'm not sure that the WPCA or the committee as it's structured right now would be perceived as being 100% representation. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I have a comment on that. How many people are on the WPCA committee?
there are 9 with 2 alternates.
And there's the 2 in attendance here, as well as Dimitri, correct? And Jim, you're a select person, so I would think that you would be privy to that if you choose to, being a resident as well as a selectman. Am I correct or not?
Well,
I mean, I understand it's mostly not Soundview members. I mean, how do we change
Well,
that?
right. What the concern of the committee is, it's 4 people, 1 person from each of the PBAs. That's
Got
3.
that.
The 4th
Yep.
person is appointed, by our WPCA. And those 4 people pretty much have complete control over the project going forward. What I would like to see is after year 2, when construction is near
Okay,
finished, I'd like to see a new administrative body made up for this. You know, we can negotiate during the CSA how that would be comprised. I don't know what that would look like, but there should be equal representation across the board, or it's town-wide.
So again, hopefully long before effluent starts to flow, we've reached an agreement with the beach associations, and I will continue to say Point Woods, because I don't want to forget them, that there'll be one governing body in Old Lyme that votes and discusses sewer issues. I believe each community should have equal representation,
Mhm.
with maybe Old Lyme having 2 or 3, so there's 11 people on the board. I mean, it'd be five entities, two. Old Lyme maybe 3. I don't know, but it would have to obviously be negotiated with all the entities. But hopefully, and I believe that most of the entities I'm speaking of right now would prefer to see one entity as certainly administer. It's going to be some type of one entity. It's
It
not.
has to be.
I don't believe they want to get into running the thing or anything else. In general, the way this works is the WPCA hires someone to run it, and they report to the WPCA, and the WPCA will vote on things that have to be voted on and leave the other person decide what has to get done. As far as your concern about Soundview not being equally represented or 100% represented, I've heard this a couple of months ago where someone said the same thing. And my personal perspective is that I try to be fair with all my business dealings. So I don't think I would do anything. I don't think I would make a decision for Soundview that I wouldn't make for myself. However, the most important thing for me is to have a successful project, is to have a project that is going to be built and that people feel confident that they've at least received representation without feeling as though maybe they were slighted. So I believe that, I don't know, I didn't look at the CSA. I know they're appointed. I don't know if it's appointed from the WPCA or not, but we can change that because the CSA has not been signed yet. And I would entertain anyone that the Soundview people felt they wanted to do, but I still think they would have to be voted in by the WPCAs to represent them. So if you wanted to pick someone from Soundview yourself, I don't think that there would be much of a problem having the WPCA vote you as a representative during construction. I believe that if other people were picked, then there may be a difficult hurdle to pass. That being said, I believe I am like the best person to be on there because I'm very familiar with the whole process. But if it's going to be a problem, I would rather have someone else do that than create a problem in town.
Thank you, Steve.
So there's a lot of negotiations that we have to do. There's a lot of sitting down at the tables. There's
For
a lot of
CSA.
things for the CSA,
right.
for moving forward the WPCA, for EDUs. There's a lot to be going on between now and January. When I'm assuming bids would come back sometime in January, you're thinking?
No, they'll be,
December?
their bid, they're opened publicly. So if they're bid December 15th, you'll know the low bidder is December 15th, 5 minutes after they were due. You know, it's
Well, I'm assuming you must have someone go over your bids.
then the engineers will go over to evaluate the bidders to see if they're capable of doing the bid. Yeah, to doing the, yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
No.
No. Okay, so we need to call for a motion. Jim,
I'll
I'm
make-
gonna ask you to make the motion.
Oh, thanks.
Well,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the New London IMA.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the New London IMA to be signed? I need a caveat to that, though. It has to be a clean copy. And I understand Mr. Estep is willing to do that once he knows we've voted. A clean copy, and the signature page that I'm signing is attached to it. Because I'm not just signing blank pages and throwing them on the end. That's not the way we sign contracts in a municipality. So I know that the other beach associations have signed some pages. I understand that, and I know that they have difficulties, but everything can be done through DocuSign and sent through.
Well, can you just sign the original? Say that there's a spot for you on those papers. We'll attach them to the contract and you can sign.
It has to be attached. It's what we do. This is what we do.
No, I understand. So there's 8 originals. There's a blank where your signature is.
And how do I, but it's not the clean copy. The 8.
Well, no, it's just a page. They can attach that signature page to the original. To the ones that Brian is gonna make.
Our attorneys said the signature page should be attached to the IMA and when you sign it. And so that is the document. And I will initial every single page of the IMA as I'm signing so that they know that this was the document I saw as I signed. If
Okay.
they want to add their little page later, that's up to them. But we do business as a municipality, and that's how municipalities do business. There isn't one first selectman in this state who would sign a blank page and not have the attachment.
No, I'm not asking you to sign a
Okay.
blank page.
Well,
What
you're asking me to sign a page that's not attached.
No, I'm asking you to sign the original page, the page that everyone else has signed. The 3 beach associations have signed a paper with their signatures.
So if
There's a blank there
Mr.
for you. If
so
they
Mr.
attach it to the
so if
original.
Mr. Estep would like to assign that, take that page and assign it to the document, then I'll sign.
Okay.
But it has to be attached to the document.
Yep.
Okay,
That's fine. Thank you.
all right. All right. So with that, call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Abstentions? None. Hearing none, motion passes. I need a motion to adjourn because zoning is going to need to start in 2 minutes.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Any opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
6:28, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank
Don't
you.
have to turn off our microphones,
I just have to
correct?
turn this-
Martha, do we need to turn this off?
No, you can leave them on because they're coming in.